Right, so to nobody's surprise whatsoever, to those familiar with the odious Wes Streeting, he's got designs on becoming Prime Minister. But his reasons for doing so, his drive, are also not very Labourish, not at all socialist, and with the media appearing to be this weekend making a concerted effort to sell Screechy to the public as likeable as a Monday morning as he is, with the Centrist Guardian doing a puff piece on him, no less, because of course they have. It's something they're clearly eyeing up for him in the future. But having read it, marginally keeping my breakfast down, went out for a breath of fresh air halfway, repelled the nausea, took a travel sickness pill before returning. It is just the most rancid load of dross I've read recently, extolling the non-existent virtues of a man who came to Labour, God knows why, his grandmother seemingly the influence there, because how this piece came across to me insofar as how Streeting's life experiences shaped him. He spent his entire life missing the point of where he came from, where he wants to go, and what he wants to achieve. The piece was titled, "Prime Ministers Have Huge Power, so why would you not want the job?" That in itself bothered me, because surely that's what the world's despots told themselves growing up. Power for power's sake, is that what drives him? I never thought I would ever enter politics. Here I am, a town councillor now. I make videos every day, as regular viewers can attest to, tearing apart what politicians on all sides are doing and how mainstream sources in the media present that in the twisted, spinny way that they do. But I came to that because of the hardship, stress and damage being inflicted on my family as a carer for disabled loved ones and living through the last 13 years with what the Tories have done to families like mine. I came into politics out of anger, out of lived experience, out of a feeling of if I don't stand up and do something or say something about this, how can I expect someone else to? Stand up, be counted, and all of that. I have no political delusions of grandeur, though. I just want to get by and live without being in fear of the next assessment my family faces. My wife's PIP renewal came through the door last week, so here we go again. But Streeting, no. He wants the top job and allegedly has done since school. And my comparing myself to Streeting isn't the worst comparison in the world, actually. We're of a similar age, believe it or not. He's only 5 years younger than myself, and we come from a similar background. But he is absolute anathema to me as a politician. To me, he's got it completely wrong. Streeting, as part of this Guardian puff piece, returned to the council flat he grew up in. Literally, the first paragraph of the article reads, "This wasn't a nice place to live," he says firmly. "I spent most of my childhood thinking, I want to escape." He disliked living in council property and wished his mother had more money and could afford the lifestyle his friend Luke enjoyed. He was embarrassed by his relative poverty. Now, one of my earliest memories is of hiding behind the sofa with my mother after switching the telly off, hiding from the milkman because we didn't have his money. We did this all the time. It was normal growing up through Thatcher. I didn't think much of it at the time. At that age, I didn't know any different. It wasn't pleasant, but did I come to resent my friends who had more money? Growing up in Helston, small town in West Cornwall, with a whacking great naval base here as it does, I went to school with others like myself who couldn't afford much and others who wanted for nothing, such as the wage disparity between those who came from naval families and those who didn't. Nobody rubbed it in each other's faces, but it stood out, certainly. And I can't imagine Streeting's friend Luke did this on purpose with him. He didn't rub it in his face, yet Streeting talks of being embarrassed by his poverty because his friend had more. He wanted to escape his council property because he didn't like it. Well, before those properties, there were slums. I dare say you'd have hated them a lot more. You had a roof over your head, which people do not even have now, cannot take for granted anymore in this day and age. Yet all you talk about is hating it and being jealous of your richer mate. It's all very me, me, me. Okay, it's a piece about him, so to an extent, why not? But the attitudes are anything but those of solidarity and collectivism and what being in Labour is supposed to mean, and being for the many, not the few, to nick a certain phrase. Streeting wanted more for himself, better things for himself, and now he talks about wanting to be PM in terms of it being about power. And that is for himself too. If that's his end goal, and when you have someone purporting to be in a position to serve others, to serve constituents, as an MP is elected to do, there's no sign whatsoever that anything like that even enters his head. It's certainly not by his own words what has driven him. What drives him is a sense of personal gain. He admitted in hindsight, revisiting the property, as he did for The Guardian, that he didn't realise how lucky he was at that time. But to put yourself in a position whereby you want to gain all the more, to run the country, your aspiration being one of power, it just feels like lip service when you say things like that. It just smacks of, oh, I'd better say something Labourish, or they might not, or they might be on to me too much. It's not believable. It doesn't come across as genuine. And aside from his words here in this article, of course, there are his actions which always speak louder than words. He blocks anyone who questions his actions on social media or what he says and does. He, as the Labour Shadow Health Secretary, has taken thousands from people connected to private health interests, not in the interests of the public. And when he is an apparent outspoken advocate for the NHS, which saved his life when Streeting was battling cancer, it's almost analogous to Johnson doing likewise regarding them saving him from COVID, only to carry on throwing the NHS under a bus, along with us, the public, relying on it. I can't help but draw the parallel there. Maybe I'm being particularly unfair there. Maybe that is not right. But I can't help but see the comparison. They saved Streeting's life. They saved your life, Wes, yet you champion private health, want more involvement of it in the NHS and take donations from those with ties to private health. Why should we believe you any more on the NHS than the likes of Johnson, who have been privatising it, like the rest of the Tories have, for over a decade now? Streeting went through significant family upheaval when young, coming back to the article. I can't relate to that bit. I grew up in a pretty solid family. I'm luckier than him there. But another sentence in the article did stand out when he said, if you dragged Rishi Sunak out here, it would be like him landing on an alien planet. But you want the same things as Sunak, Wes. You were jealous of others like him when young, and you aspire to have his job one day. So just because you grew up poor and Sunak didn't, you've still arrived at the same central ethos and the same politics, advocating for a party that represents no change from what the Tories have been doing and what they are still doing under Sunak. Pretending you'll be different. Many, many desperate people determined Labour will be different regardless, that they have to be, that the thought of Labour not being better is too much to bear, means they hate people like me calling them out, holding them to account as well. They want the top job. They need to be held to account too. But I'm an absolute realist. I can't be delusional to myself. I don't live in a fantasy world, no matter how much I want change, because change was on offer before in Labour, and the likes of Streeting stood against that, even bragged about not backing Corbyn's leadership, when now we as his supporters are having demanded of us our support for those that basically preferred the Tories in power back then. They demand that we now support the saboteurs. No way. Not going to happen. Wes Streeting stands for a party now far more in keeping with his own ambitions, which are no different to the Tories in effect, and he dreams of leading it and the country. If that doesn't sum him up, I don't know what does. He and I came to very different conclusions, coming from not completely indifferent beginnings, living through similar times as children, and where I, like many of you watching this, just wants to get by, enjoy the basics, live a life. Streeting is still coming across as the poor kid, jealous of his rich mate and wanting what he wants, and we don't need leaders so self-absorbed as that. Who are you leading? What are you leading if you're only in it for yourself? Who are you running the country in whose interests for, except for your own? And after you've liked, shared and subscribed to the channel, as I hope you will, you can watch this video here where Starmer's Labour are treating Streeting as the mould by which to measure their future by-election candidates. And I'll catch you on the next video, I hope. Happy Father's Day, dads.